Now, according to Home Office figures, asylum backlog figures have now hit a record high, with a total of 175,000 people awaiting approval in their first stage of their application in June of 2023. Figures also revealed a 63% increase of people coming on work visas in the year to June 2023, whilst the Migrant Observatory claimed only 41% of the total asylum seeker applicants travelled via small boats. Well, joining me now is human rights lawyer David Haigh and the director of the Centre for Migration, Stephen Woolfe. David, I'll start with you, if I may. Are you of the view that actually the solution here is what Labour proposed, which is opening up more legal routes for people to apply to come here from elsewhere?
Good afternoon, Darren. I don't think that's the solution. That's one tiny part of how you could look at the asylum and the migration areas in the round, but it's certainly not the solution to the absolute farce and disaster that we have in the asylum system and in the obviously with legal migrants. It really is a disaster, and that's definitely not the only solution.
Yes, so I'm going to throw a Woolfe into the hay now. Stephen, what do you make of that? I mean, the Labour Party are parroting this line all the time now, and, you know, if they do get into power, opening up more legal routes, is that going to be a way in which you can actually process things quicker?
Oh, actually, I think if we're going to look at the issues, David's pinpointed it pretty accurately. We have a mass number of people coming across in terms of asylum applicants, but also humanitarian protection. We have a mess in terms of the numbers of people coming over for work visas, and we have those coming over for students as dependents and family unions as dependents. And the Labour Party's policies of just having safe routes are only looking at one smaller area of it. And it wouldn't stop it. I've said many, many times that if you open humanitarian routes for those people, last year, 15,000 who were rejected, they would simply try and come anyway, irrespective of whether you've got these boats. And they're coming on vans, lorries, ferries, planes. All the routes now are open to them, so it won't stop them.
Right. So, David, then, what would you say to viewers who are watching who are intensely frustrated about this issue, who do want it to stop, and who, frankly, you know, we're talking about speeding up asylum applications here. What do you say to the people who actually don't want any more to come, who actually say Britain right now is struggling enough as it is?
Well, I think it's not just about the ones that are coming over the channel. Obviously, there's a lot of people are coming at the moment, but it's the ones that we've got here, as we see from these asylum backlog figures. The number of people that I hear, the reason why the cost of that system is doubled in the last year to now nearly 4 billion is because of this backlog, because things are taking not a few days, they're taking months, and in certain cases, years and years to process an asylum claim. That's one of the big areas that we need to attack, and we just don't seem to be doing it. If anything, it's getting worse and worse rather than less and less. And with the new act that's come through, there were mentions that the asylum processors should be taking days. They still can't get it done in months.
Yeah, I mean, Stephen, is there a democratic argument here to say that, you know, the British public keep voting for border controls, we keep voting for fewer migrants to actually be able to come here, but we never seem to get it? People are pulling their hair out. You should see my email inbox. It's, you know, packed fuller than a greedy boy's lunchbox.
Well, look, there is a very clear mandate from the British public, whether it's through the referendum for Brexit, through the elections of Boris Johnson, to the European elections of 2014, and actually before that, way back to Margaret Thatcher's period, where you had MPs all arguing that we should be very tight on borders. But I think there is a very clear point for perhaps even a referendum on this issue. Not that this country likes to have referendums, to try and make it clear. But I just do want to point out 2 or 3 key numbers that have been missed in this latest statistics that have come out. Firstly, this government has granted more offers of protection than any other government in the history of the United Kingdom, more than the Tony Blair years of 103,200 in the year 2001, with 175,000 people. In student visas, the dependents that we've allowed in are up 90% on last year, which is 154,000 people. And then when you add work visas and you allow their spouses of 60,500, you have a total last year of 390,000 people being allowed to come into the country. That's the 11th largest city in the country of Coventry. It's bigger than that. That's the numbers coming in.
Wow.
And the other big number is 669,000 people were given extensions of their temporary stay. That's the third largest, bigger than Glasgow. So overall, you had 1 million people, again, being allowed to stay or come into the country last year. The country needs to know whether it can afford to do so in infrastructure, finance, costs, and education and public services. That's why it's so important.
Yeah, David, I mean, that issue there of students, that was an area where Suella Braverman wanted to tighten things up, did she not?
I think that there's many areas that she's mentioned. That's one of the areas, and she's also had issues with particularly from Indian visas coming over, people coming over from India, and it's these are not. I say it time and time again. These are not new issues, But even back when I was at university, which is a long, long time ago, you would see that there were clear scams and immigration scams to bring people in, private universities and English courses, people overstaying as students, and that's another area that again isn't being tackled, people overstaying, whether it's people overstaying student visas, work visas, or tourist visas. So a lot of focus has been put on the migrant crossings, and of course that's very important, but other areas like bringing the asylum backlog down, being more efficient, processing them quicker, and then making sure people are not overstaying. And putting in processes to make sure that if people are here, you even have systems, I'm sure many of your viewers, when they leave the country, passports don't get checked often, so you've got people here that shouldn't be here, and there's just no effective processing of that. And those are areas where I think you could get some easy wins.
Yeah, Stephen, I mean, do you think there's an argument here, because this case has been made a few times over this conversation, but the nature of identification in this country, do we need ID cards to actually have people prove that they have a right to be in this country?
Look, I'm pretty libertarian in the view that I've never wanted to see the state involved in monitoring my life, whether it's what I spend, where I go, or indeed having the identification cards, which always to me has that fear of Soviet Union, Russia, or what was happening in Germany during Nazi periods. And that for me is a natural rejection of the idea. But I am beginning to come across to the view when I look at what happens in Belgium, where they're much more efficient in being able to assess people who come from different countries being allowed to work or claim benefits. And so I'm open to the idea of a system that comes in place. But my natural feeling is I don't want it, but I understand that there's growing calls to actually implement it.
Yeah. David, if I ask you to show your papers, are you going to, kick up a fuss? Oh, we've lost David there. We'll try and get him back. Stephen, I'm going to go back to you. I mean, you will have seen the GB News exclusives that we've had this week, Stephen, on both the social media being used to actually advertise British women to migrants who may want to come here for potentially nefarious purposes, and the issue of asylum claims going through the roof. Can you understand how frustrating it is for many people in this country who just feel that they are utterly powerless? I mean, we voted to take back control.
Yes, and this is where you get this growing sense of powerlessness and rejection of society, rejection of politics, rejection of government officials, because we don't, as a nation, feel that our views matter anymore. We can see small groups of people making decisions about our education, what goes on the television, who's allowed to even bank with a particular bank. And that's a very dangerous and really awful thing for people to start having to feel that they no longer feel in a free country, and they disengage from that. And immigration is only one of those points and where they feel ignored. I think we do need to tackle it. I think we do need to look at listening more. But the why you get politicians feeling out of kilter with the public is they just don't feel that they can have a conversation with them. They feel scared about doing it, or maybe they reject it themselves because the groupthink in Parliament, the civil service, and those around them is much more, let's have a liberal, open world.
Okay.
And they don't have to live with the consequences.
No worry. Thank you very much for your time today, lads. We're at the end of that segment there. David Haigh, thank you very much, and Stephen Woolfe there.